They treated her like a worthless maid. Like she didn't matter. Like she was invisible. Every day, she cleaned their floors, listened to their insults, and said nothing. But what they didn't know was, she was waiting. Because on that day, everything changed. The gates opened, black cars arrived, and armed men walked in. Not for the owners of the house, but for her. They treated her like she was invisible, but she was watching everything. The Raymond mansion stood like a palace at the edge of the city. Tall gates, shining marble floors, and walls that whispered wealth. To outsiders, it was a place of luxury. To Emily, it was a cage. Every morning before sunrise, she was already awake. While the rest of the house slept in silk sheets, she scrubbed floors that reflected faces that never looked at her twice. Emily! Mrs. Raymond's sharp voice echoed through the hallway. Emily hurried in, her head slightly bowed. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Raymond didn't even look at her. This table is dusty. Do I have to point out every little thing to you? I'll clean it again, Emily said softly. Again, Mrs. Raymond scoffed. You should have done it right the first time. Emily nodded. No argument or reaction. That was what they were used to. Silence. In the kitchen, the other workers watched her quietly. Some pitied her. Others avoided her, afraid of being treated the same way. One of them, a young cleaner named Tara, leaned closer and whispered, Why do you let them talk to you like that? Emily paused for a moment, her hand still on the cloth. Then she smiled faintly. Not every battle needs noise. Tara frowned. That sounds like something someone powerful would say. Emily didn't respond. She just continued cleaning. But her eyes were different. They weren't empty. They were calculating. Later that afternoon, Mr. Raymond returned home. The atmosphere changed instantly. Servants stood straighter. Conversations died. Even the air felt heavier. Where is my drink? He barked as he walked in, loosening his tie. Emily stepped forward quickly, holding a tray. Right here, sir. He took the glass without a word, then suddenly paused. His eyes scanned her face for a second longer than usual. You're new. I've been here for 3 months, sir. He took a sip. Then you're forgettable. A few servants nearby chuckled nervously. Emily didn't react. Next time be faster, he added coldly, walking away. She watched him go. Just for a second, her expression changed. Not hurt. Not anger. Something deeper. Recognition. That evening, the mansion hosted guests. Wealthy men in expensive suits, women dripping in jewelry, laughter that sounded too loud to be real. Emily moved through the crowd like a shadow, serving drinks, clearing plates, invisible. But she listened. Always listening. I heard Raymond's business doubled this year. Of course. The man knows how to eliminate competition. Not just business competition. They laughed quietly. Emily's grip tightened slightly on the tray. As the party ended and the guests left, the mansion slowly returned to silence. One by one, the lights went out. The servants retreated to their quarters. But Emily didn't go inside. She stood outside the mansion gates, her simple uniform moving gently in the night breeze. Her eyes were fixed on the road ahead. Waiting. The guard noticed her. What are you doing out here? Your shift is over. Emily didn't turn. I just needed some air. He shrugged. Don't stay too long. This isn't a place for wandering. If only he knew. Minutes passed. The night grew quieter. Then headlights appeared in the distance. A single black car approached slowly, its engine low and controlled. It wasn't like the noisy vehicles that usually came and went. This one felt intentional. Emily's expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened slightly at her sides. The car stopped just outside the gate. The guard stepped forward immediately. State your business. Before he could finish, the back door of the car opened. A man stepped out, dressed in black. Still, silent and dangerous. He didn't look at the guard. His eyes went straight to Emily. And in that moment, everything shifted. The air felt heavier. The silence louder. Emily took one slow step forward. For the first time since she arrived at the mansion, she didn't look small. She didn't look invisible. She looked like someone who had been hiding. The guard turned, confused. Do you know him? Emily didn't answer. Her gaze remained locked on the man. The man placed a hand over his chest and lowered his head slightly. Respect. Not for the mansion. Not for Mr. Raymond. For her. Emily exhaled softly. Almost like she had been holding her breath for a long time. And now something had finally arrived. The girl they called Nothing was never just a maid. Morning came, but the peace of the Raymond mansion didn't last long. At exactly 9:17 a.m., The sound of engines shattered the calm. Not one. Not two. 3 black SUVs rolled slowly toward the mansion gates. Their movement was smooth, controlled, intentional. Inside the house, one of the guards rushed to the window. "Sir, you need to see this." Mr. Raymond frowned, adjusting his cufflinks. "What is it now?" "They're not on the schedule." That was enough to make him pause. No one came to the Raymond mansion unannounced. No one dared. Outside, the SUVs came to a synchronized stop. The doors opened. Men stepped out, all dressed in black. No wasted movement. No unnecessary words. Just presence. Heavy, cold, and dangerous. The air shifted instantly. The gate guards exchanged nervous glances. "Who are these people?" one whispered. "I don't know." One of the men stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "We're here for someone." His voice was calm, but carried authority that didn't ask for permission. The guard swallowed. "You need to state your business. You can't just." The man didn't even look at him. Instead, he adjusted his cuff slightly and said, "Open the gate." It wasn't a request. Inside the mansion, tension spread like wildfire. Servants gathered near windows, whispering. Mrs. Raymond clutched her robe tightly. This better not be trouble. Mr. Raymond walked out toward the entrance, forcing confidence into his steps. "I'll handle this." But even he felt it. Something wasn't right. The gates opened slowly. The black SUVs remained outside. But the men walked in. Together. In sync. Like they owned the ground beneath their feet. Mr. Raymond stepped forward, his voice firm but slightly strained. "I am Mr. Raymond. You are trespassing on private property." No response. The men kept walking. Past him. Past the guards. Past everything. Straight into the mansion. "What do you think you're doing?" he snapped, turning quickly. Still no answer. It was as if he didn't exist. Inside, Emily stood in the hallway, holding a tray of freshly cleaned glasses. She heard the footsteps before she saw them. Her grip on the tray tightened slightly. Not fear. Recognition. The servants around her began to panic. Who are they? Is this a raid? What's happening? Emily didn't move. The men entered the main hall. And then, they stopped. Their eyes scanned the room. Not searching randomly. Searching with purpose. Until they found her. Emily. Standing quietly, in her simple maid uniform. For a brief second, time seemed to pause. One of the men stepped forward slowly. The others followed behind him. Their footsteps echoed across the marble floor. The servants instinctively moved out of the way. No one dared to stand in their path. Even Mrs. Raymond backed up, confused and shaken. "Excuse me. You can't just walk in here." Mr. Raymond pushed forward angrily. "I am speaking to you." Still nothing. His voice grew louder. "Do you know who I am?" The lead man finally stopped walking. But he didn't turn to Raymond. His gaze remained fixed on Emily. Then he lowered his head and placed his hand over his chest. The other men followed instantly. One by one. In perfect synchronization. They bowed. Silence. Absolute silence. A glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered on the floor. No one reacted. No one breathed. Mrs. Raymond's voice trembled. "What is this?" The lead man spoke, his tone respectful, almost reverent. "Miss, we've been searching for you." The words echoed through the room. Every eye turned to Emily. The maid. The invisible girl. The one no one noticed. Mr. Raymond laughed nervously. "This is ridiculous. You must have the wrong person." No one responded to him. Because for the first time, Emily moved. She gently set the tray down on a nearby table. Slowly. Deliberately. Then she lifted her head. Her posture changed. Her presence changed. It was subtle, but undeniable. The quiet maid they knew was gone. In her place stood someone else. Someone calm. Someone in control. Someone powerful. She took one step forward. The men straightened immediately, but kept their heads slightly lowered. Mrs. Raymond whispered, her voice shaking. "Emily?" Emily didn't look at her. Her eyes were on the man in front of her. "You took your time," she said softly. The man lowered his head further. "We had to be sure it was safe, Mississippi." Safe. The word didn't belong in this house. Not anymore. Mr. Raymond's face went pale. His voice cracked slightly. "Who are you?" The question hung in the air. Heavy. Dangerous. Unavoidable. Emily finally turned her head. Slowly. Her eyes met his. And for the first time since she arrived at the mansion, he felt it. Fear. The maid smiled faintly and said, "You should have asked that, the day I arrived. The air in the mansion felt heavier than ever before. No one moved. No one spoke. All eyes were on Emily, the maid they had ignored, now standing at the center of something they didn't understand. Mr. Raymond's voice trembled slightly. "Who are you?" The question lingered. Emily didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked forward slowly, her footsteps echoing across the marble floor. Each step was calm, controlled, like she had done this 1,000 times before. The men in black parted instantly to make way for her in respect. She stopped just a few feet away from Mr. Raymond, close enough for him to see her clearly. For the first time, really see her. "My name," she said quietly, "is Emily Varela." The name hit the room like a shockwave. One of the older servants gasped. "Varela?" Mrs. Raymond frowned. "That name sounds." Then her eyes widened. Recognition. "No, it can't be." The lead guard stepped forward, his voice firm and proud. "Daughter of Don Alejandro Varela." Silence. But not the normal kind. This silence carried weight. The kind of silence that comes when a name means something dangerous. Mr. Raymond staggered back slightly. "That's impossible," he said quickly. "Don Varela died years ago. Everyone knows that." Emily's eyes didn't leave his. "Yes," she replied softly. "He did." Her voice didn't break, didn't shake, but something in her tone made the room colder. Mrs. Raymond stepped back, her hand covering her mouth. "You're saying you're his daughter?" Emily nodded once. "I am." The servants looked at each other in disbelief. Don Varela. A name whispered in fear. A man no one crossed. A man who controlled things people didn't talk about. And now his daughter had been living under their roof, cleaning their floors, serving their food, taking their insults. Mr. Raymond shook his head aggressively. No, this is some kind of joke. A setup." His voice rose. "You expect me to believe that the daughter of that man was working here as a maid?" Emily tilted her head slightly. "Is it so hard to believe?" she asked calmly. "Yes," he snapped. "Because people like you don't just disappear." Her gaze sharpened. "But I did." The room fell silent again. This time heavier. More personal. Emily took another step forward. "You said he died," she continued. "And you're right." She paused. Then added, "He was murdered." The word landed hard. Murdered. A ripple of whispers spread among the servants. Mrs. Raymond looked at her husband, confused. "Raymond, what is she talking about?" He didn't answer. Because he couldn't. Emily's eyes locked onto him. Sharp and unforgiving. "The man who betrayed him," she said slowly, "is standing right in front of me." The room froze. Every head turned toward Mr. Raymond. His face drained of color. "That's a lie," he shouted immediately. "She's lying." But his voice lacked strength. It lacked certainty. Emily didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "I remember that night," she said quietly. And suddenly, the world around her seemed to fade. Flashback. Rain poured heavily against the windows. A younger Emily hid behind a large wooden cabinet, her small hands covering her mouth to stop her breathing. Voices echoed through the room, angry and tense. Her father stood tall, his presence commanding even in danger. "Why?" he asked. And then Mr. Raymond stepped out of the shadows, smiling cold, because this wasn't business. This was betrayal. Back to present. Emily's eyes glistened slightly, but no tears fell. "I saw everything," she said. Mr. Raymond shook his head, backing away. "You were just a child. You couldn't have." "I saw you," she cut in. Silence. Dead silence. Mrs. Raymond's voice trembled. "Raymond, tell me this isn't true." He didn't respond, because the truth was written all over his face. Emily stepped closer. Now only inches away. "You shook his hand," she continued softly. "And then you destroyed him." Her voice lowered further. "You built your empire on his blood." Mr. Raymond's legs weakened slightly. "You don't understand," he muttered. "That's how the world works." "No," Emily said calmly. "That's how your world works." The power in the room had shifted completely. The man who once controlled everything now looked small. Emily straightened slightly, her expression returning to calm. "I didn't come here to clean your house," she said. "I came here to remember your face." The words hit harder than any shout, because they carried intention, planning, patience, revenge. Mr. Raymond's breathing became uneven. What do you want?" he asked quietly. Emily looked at him for a long moment. Then a faint, cold smile appeared. "I want you," she said softly, "to feel exactly what my father felt." The shift in power was undeniable. Just hours ago, The Raymond mansion stood as a symbol of control and wealth. Now it felt like a trap cage. No one entered. No one left. The gates were sealed. Men in black stood at every corner, silent, alert, unmoving. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. Phones had been taken. Security disabled. Every exit guarded. The servants huddled together in fear, whispering nervously. What's going to happen to us? Are we in danger? Is this a takeover? No one had answers. Because the only person who mattered right now was Emily. Mr. Raymond stood in the center of the living room, his breathing uneven, his confidence shattered. This is illegal, he said, trying to steady his voice. You can't just walk into my home and take over. No one responded. Because no one needed to. The truth was already clear. This was no longer his house. Suddenly he turned. And ran. Desperate. Panicked. He rushed toward the back hallway, hoping, praying, for an escape route. But he didn't get far. Two men in black stepped in front of him instantly, blocking his path. Without a word, they grabbed his arms and dragged him back. No! Let me go! He shouted, struggling. His voice echoed through the mansion. But it carried no power anymore. Only fear. They forced him down to his knees. Right in front of Emily. She stood there calmly, watching him. The same man who once looked down on her. Now unable to even stand in her presence. You used my father's trust, she said quietly. Her voice wasn't loud, but it filled the room. You sat at his table. You called him your friend. Mr. Raymond shook his head desperately. It wasn't like that. And then, she continued, cutting him off. You destroyed him. Mrs. Raymond stepped forward, her face pale with shock. Raymond, tell me she's wrong, please. He didn't look at her. Because he couldn't. Emily took a slow step closer. You didn't just take his empire, she said. You erased him. Her eyes darkened. You erased us. Mr. Raymond's voice cracked. I had no choice. If I didn't act first, he would have. Don't, Emily said sharply. The word cut through the air like a blade. Don't try to rewrite the past. Silence. Emily knelt slightly, bringing herself closer to his level. Her voice softened, but it became even more dangerous. I was there that night. Flashback. Rain poured endlessly. The sound of thunder filled the air. Young Emily hid behind a cabinet, trembling, her small hands gripping the wood tightly. Her father stood strong, even as danger surrounded him. Then the betrayal. A handshake. A moment of trust. Followed by destruction. The sound of everything falling apart. And a little girl, forced to watch it all. Back to present. Emily's eyes glistened, but her face remained steady. Controlled. Unbreakable. I remember the way he looked at you, she said quietly. He trusted you. Mr. Raymond's head dropped in guilt, regret, and fear. All mixed together. I remember the moment that trust broke, she continued. Her voice lowered. And I remember the silence after. Tears rolled down Mrs. Raymond's face. How could you do this? But still. No answer. Emily stood up slowly. The softness in her voice disappeared, replaced by something colder. Final. You took everything from me, she said. She turned slightly, looking around the mansion. The chandeliers. The walls. The wealth. All of this, she added, was never yours. The men in black stepped forward slightly, waiting and ready. Mr. Raymond looked up at her, desperation in his eyes. Please, he whispered. I can fix this. I can give it all back. Emily looked down at him. And for a brief second, there was silence. Then she spoke. You don't get to fix what you destroyed. She turned away from him, as if he no longer mattered. Because he didn't. Take everything, she ordered. Her voice carried across the room like a command that could not be ignored. Instantly, the men moved. Files were seized. Doors were opened. Control was taken. Efficient. Precise. Absolute. Mr. Raymond collapsed slightly, his strength gone. Everything he built, everything he stole, was disappearing right in front of him. Emily walked toward the exit. Without looking back. Without hesitation. Behind her, his voice broke. Emily, please. She paused for a brief second. Just one. But she didn't turn around. Now, she said softly. You lose everything. By morning, everything had changed. The Raymond mansion, once filled with pride and control, now stood in silence, cold, empty, stripped of its power. News spread fast. Faster than anyone expected. By noon, the headlines were everywhere. Business tycoon Raymond falls overnight. Illegal empire exposed. Assets frozen. Investigations begin. The same people who once praised his name now distanced themselves from it. Inside the mansion, the atmosphere was unrecognizable. The grand chandelier still hung from the ceiling. The marble floors still shined. But something important was gone. Authority, control, and illusion. Servants moved quietly, their voices low, their eyes uncertain. No one knew what would happen next. No one knew if they would still have jobs. No one knew if they were safe. Mrs. Raymond sat on the couch, her hands trembling as she held a glass of water she hadn't even touched. Tears streamed down her face. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know any of this." Her voice broke. Everything was a lie. Footsteps echoed softly through the hallway. Slow, steady, confident. Emily. She entered the room, no longer in a maid's uniform. Now she wore black. Simple, elegant, and powerful. Her presence alone shifted the air. Every servant instinctively lowered their head. The same people who once ignored her now couldn't even meet her eyes. Mrs. Raymond looked up at her, desperation written all over her face. "Emily, please." Her voice cracked. "If I had known, I would have never treated you that way." Emily stopped a few steps away. Her expression remained calm. Unreadable. "You didn't know," Emily repeated softly. Mrs. Raymond nodded quickly. Yes, I didn't know." Emily tilted her head slightly. "But you didn't care to know." The words landed heavily. Not loud, but undeniable. Mrs. Raymond broke down completely, covering her face as she cried. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Emily didn't respond. Because some apologies come too late. She turned her gaze slightly, looking around the mansion one last time. The place where she was insulted, ignored, reduced to nothing. And yet, it had served its purpose. A man in black stepped forward respectfully. "Miss," he said, lowering his head slightly. "Everything has been secured." Emily nodded once. "Good." Another man approached. The accounts, properties, and holdings all transferred or frozen as instructed. Emily took a slow breath. Not of relief, but of closure. "Prepare the cars," she said calmly. "Yes, Mississippi." As the men moved quickly to carry out her orders, Emily began walking toward the exit. Each step steady, unhurried, certain. Behind her, whispers filled the room. Is she leaving? Where will she go? What happens now? No one dared to ask her directly. At the doorway she paused. Just for a moment. Not because she was unsure, but because she was remembering. A younger version of herself. Standing in this same place. Small, silent, and powerless. Now, that girl was gone. Outside, the gates of the mansion stood open. And beyond them, a line of black luxury cars stretched across the road. Engines running. Men standing by and waiting. The moment she stepped out, every man straightened. Every door opened. Every eye lowered in respect. This wasn't fear. This was loyalty. The lead guard approached and opened the car door for her. "Where to, miss?" he asked. Emily paused. Her eyes looked ahead, not just at the road, but beyond it. For a second, the world felt quiet again. Then she spoke softly, but with certainty. "Home." She entered the car. The door closed smoothly behind her. Within seconds, the convoy began to move. One car after another. From inside the car, Emily looked out the window. The mansion grew smaller in the distance. A place that once held her as nothing, now left behind completely. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass. Not a maid. Not a victim. Something else. Something stronger. Her eyes softened slightly. Not with weakness, but with peace. Because the past no longer controlled her. And the future belonged to her. They thought she was nothing, until she became everything. And that was only the beginning. Because the truth about her is far more dangerous than they ever imagined. What happens next will destroy everything they built. If you want part 2, make sure you like this video and subscribe. Because you don't want to miss WH.